Picture this. You're right in the middle of an epic multiplayer raid, perfectly timed with your guild, and suddenly, bam, you're hit by a massive lag spike. Or maybe you've noticed how a brand new MMO server runs absolutely flawlessly on day one, but give it a few months, and it starts suffering from micro stutters, rubber banding, and those inevitable soul-crushing crashes. It's incredibly frustrating, right? But what if I told you that the culprit isn't necessarily a bad internet connection or some cheap server box? What if the real problem is actually deeply embedded in the very mathematics used by modern computers? Well, enter a little something called binary ash. This is the invisible mathematical culprit that's literally burning up server architecture as we speak. Here's the core of the issue. Computers run on finite binary bits, but human mathematics, it's full of infinite decimals. Think about 1 divided by 3, or the digits of pi. Because a standard computer obviously can't store an infinite string of numbers, it just chops off the trailing decimals. Those chopped off mathematical remnants are exactly what we call binary ash. And over time, across billions of calculations in a massive online game, this data ash just accumulates. It creates massive memory bloat, skews the coordinate tracking, and causes immense physical computational friction. It literally generates heat. But there is a solution, and it requires a complete top-to-bottom rethinking of digital architecture. Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to decode an incredibly fascinating framework, the All That's Holy or ATH system. This is a revolutionary approach to server architecture, and it's designed to eradicate binary ash forever. So here's our roadmap for today. 1. The floating point problem. 2. The All That's Holy engine. 3. The 13-digit pi lid. 4. The 2.1 quadrillion governor. 5. Sovereign safe-state ledgers. And finally, 6. 999 grids for zero latency. Let's dive right in. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the floating point problem, and exactly why servers burn up. To truly appreciate the cure, we first have to fully understand the disease that's infecting standard video game engines. The old way of doing things uses a standard called IEEE 754 floating point math. When a game engine asks the server to calculate a complex bounding box or a physics collision, the processor often encounters repeating decimals. And because it's trying to calculate this impossible endless string, the logic gates in the computer chip literally spin in loops. This is known in the industry as transistor thrashing. It acts like this hidden heavy tax on every single micro movement your character makes. It generates physical friction and pumps out raw heat on the server floor instead of giving you smooth gameplay. Moving right along to Section 2, the All That's Holy engine, a totally new paradigm. This brings us to the All That's Holy 13-layer toroidal sieve engine. It's a completely new way of thinking that treats digital environments way less like abstract software and more like physical, fluid mechanics. Just like the real-world physical laws defined by the stress-energy tensor, which tracks energy density, momentum, and strict universal curvature, the ATH system applies a hard closed-loop boundary to digital computation. In reality, nature doesn't calculate endlessly to infinity, right? It balances out. The ATH system forces computers to do exactly the same thing. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct contrast between the old way and the new. Instead of letting a computer guess at a decimal like 0.33333 going on forever, which, as we know, leaks data and generates heat, the ATH engine uses a closed integer fraction fix. It demands a hard cutoff. If a number repeats, the engine snaps it shut and stores it as a clean ratio token, like the fraction 1/3. Pure whole numbers. There is zero data leak. The transistor drops its electrical load at the very millisecond the work is done, going to sleep and running absolutely ice cold. Next up, Section 3, the 13-digit pi lid. This is all about stopping infinity in its tracks. So how exactly does the engine know when to stop calculating and snap that lid shut? 13. That's the master boundary. The ATH engine enforces what is called the 13-point pi lid. It physically locks mathematical constants, like pi, to exactly 13 digits, 3.1415926535897. Any calculations that try drifting past that 13th decimal place, they are instantly categorized as useless data ash and are structurally dropped by the system's fraction coprocessor. By engaging this 13.13 latch, the endless searching is mechanically terminated. Boom! Done. The logic gates don't have to guess or trail off into the abyss. They hit the wall, lock the coordinate, and power down. They just go to sleep. This entirely eliminates memory bottlenecks, meaning that mid-raid lag spike you dread.
It mathematically cannot happen.
No way.
Which takes us to Section 4, the 2.1 quadrillion governor, basically the ultimate hard reset.
What happens when millions of players are grouped in one zone and the localized calculations begin to absolutely skyrocket? Traditional servers would just buckle under the weight and suffer a singularity crash. The AT engine, however, relies on a massive saturation ceiling known as the 2.1 quadrillion governor. To be exact, that's 2,100,000,000,000,000,000,785,3606. That is enough calculation headroom to basically run a universe. So, the crucial point to take away here is this. When the localized data density hits that exact ceiling, the engine hits the P7 critical pivot. Instead of falling into a bottomless software crash, the math triggers a mandatory action, known as infinity plus one. It systematically forces a mechanical reset. And a mechanical reset is infinitely better than a software crash because it cleanly rounds out those fractional ghosts and closes the loop without bringing the entire server down. Forever is systematically erased from the architecture, ensuring the server stays completely finite, bounded, and totally stable.
All right, Section 5, Sovereign Safe State Ledgers, and the beauty of deterministic MMOs.
Now, how do we apply these mathematical speed limits to actually coordinate thousands of players swinging swords and casting spells in a shared multiplayer space, all without desynchronizing? Well, this is handled by the Sovereign Save State Ledger. In an MMO, you want absolute determinism. If your character swings a sword, or you and another player try to pick up the exact same rare loot drop simultaneously, the Sovereign Save State Ledger acts as a single source of truth. It cannot be argued with, and it can't be forked by a lagging connection. Entries are append only. Players are synced via phase alignment, using the exact mathematical reset boundaries we just talked about, ensuring absolute determinism across the game world. If your computer disagrees with the server, the mismatched reset counters detect it instantly. No one can overwrite the truth, period.
And finally, Section 6, 999 grids, the holy grail, the path to zero latency. Here's the absolute climax of this explainer, how all this beautifully contained whole number math results in a perfectly responsive, zero-latency gaming experience. Standard internet protocols rely heavily on floating point math to calculate transmission timeouts, which totally bogs down network routers. But the AT Leech system? It eliminates router gateway lag completely. It wraps player data in a static denominator, like a /999 or /1024 matrix. The payload is then sent as two raw whole integers. And because the bottom number is a hard-coded power of 2, the network router doesn't actually have to do division. It executes a single-cycle binary bit shift. This is the secret sauce. This is what allows data to slide through the hardware gateways at maximum electrical speed. Breaking down this total system upgrade reveals a literal night and day difference. In 3D graphics, heavy decimal floating point heat is completely replaced by a 9999 matrix that uses raw, frictionless addition. In physics and hit registration, bounding box drift and stuttering are replaced by 100% deterministic integer coordinates. Even commands shift from random identifiers to locked ATH command IDs. By dropping those decimal tails, the ATH engine clears up the internal memory bus. It gives you flawless, zero-lag character rendering and perfectly timed hit registration. It's absolutely wild.
It completely changes the game. By recognizing that we cannot treat computer memory as an infinite void, and by forcing mathematical boundaries that mirror true physical containment, the All That's Holy architecture offers us a frictionless future. So I'll leave you with this. With the specter of binary ash finally eliminated and genuine zero latency achieved right down at the hardware level, what impossible, massive digital universes can this engine help us build next? The ceiling is no longer our hardware. From here on out, the ceiling is only our imagination.